Okay, let's jump straight into this. Today, in this explainer, we're looking at a historical figure who was so incredibly massive, so larger than life, that the ancient world literally had to invent legends just to make sense of him. We are, of course, talking about Cyrus the Great. Now, if you follow ancient history, you already know the Achaemenid Empire he founded was completely unprecedented. I mean, it eventually stretched across the known world, uniting all these incredibly diverse nations under a single banner. But how exactly did a minor, localized ruler from the southern Zagros Mountains pull that off? Well, to really understand the man, we first have to understand the myths that surrounded his very arrival on Earth.
So, we start with this totally wild, highly dramatic vision recorded by the Greek historian Herodotus. According to him, Astyages, the powerful king of the Median Empire, had this absolutely terrifying prophetic dream about his daughter Mindan. His advisors, the Magi, interpreted the dream to mean that Mindan's future child would one day completely overthrow Median rule. Terrified, Astyages tried to play it safe, right? He marries her off to Cambyses I, a Persian noble who the Medes considered middle class and totally unthreatening. Problem solved. But then, Astyages has a second dream. In this one, a massive vine grows directly out from Mindan's womb and completely overshadows the whole of Asia. Cue the panic. Astyages orders his most trusted general, Harpagus, to assassinate the infant Cyrus the very moment he's born.
But here's the real question, right? How much of this epic, almost cinematic story is actually true? Because we're at this fascinating point of friction here, where we really have to ask if we're looking at actual history or just a really good Hollywood script written a few millennia ago. We're about to pivot from these campfire tales straight into the hard facts. You see, the early life of Cyrus is probably one of the best examples of mythology just totally bleeding into ancient historiography. The ancient historians simply couldn't rationalize his meteoric, seemingly impossible rise to power, so they filled in the blanks with, prophetic dreams and supernatural interventions.
Which brings us to our first main section, the three tall tales. Let's briefly look at how three completely different ancient Greek historians attempted to make sense of Cyrus's miraculous rise to power.
The contrast here is just staggering. I mean, on one hand, Herodotus gives us the tale we just talked about, a royal infant narrowly escaping a king's death sentence. But then you look at historian Ctesias, and he gives us a complete rags-to-riches story. It's like they're talking about two different people. Ctesias claims Cyrus had absolutely no royal blood, none. He writes that Cyrus was the son of a poor bandit named Atridad and a goat herder named Ergaste. Driven by just extreme poverty, Cyrus supposedly walks to the Median capital of Ecbatana and gets a job as a sweeper. Literally, just working for food and clothes. He's super disciplined, gets promoted to a torchbearer, and slowly grinds his way up into the royal court. Let's stick with Ctesias for just a second longer. He writes that the royal cupbearer Artembares was so blown away by young Cyrus that he adopted him, leaving him this massive fortune that essentially bought his way to power. Ctesias even throws in a dream where Cyrus reaches out and touches the sun 3 times, which was supposed to symbolize 30 years of rule. But, okay, let's look at our third historian, Xenophon. In his work, the Cyropedia, Xenophon completely ignores Herodotus' assassination plot, and he ignores Ctesias' extreme poverty myth. Instead, he frames Cyrus's youth as this highly idealized philosophical training ground. He claims Cyrus was raised strictly on Persian moral traditions, enduring all these intense physical hardships just to gain unmatched wisdom and martial prowess.
All right, so here is the pivot to reality. Because the crucial point is this: while these Greek historians were essentially acting as storytellers, inventing myths to explain greatness, the actual, documented historical records reveal something far more impressive. When you strip away the dreams of magic vines and the touching the sun tropes, you're left with a brilliant tactical genius. His real achievements completely outshine the magic.
When we trace the historical timeline, the really crazy part is that it covers a period of just 14 years. 14 years! In that incredibly short span of time, Cyrus executed these rapid, unprecedented military conquests that completely redrew the map of the ancient world. Let's quickly break down the 3 massive dominoes that fell to the Persian army. These 3 historical steps showcase his absolute strategic brilliance. Domino number 1, the rebellion against the Medes in 550 BC. The Babylonian chronicles actually tell us that King Astyages' massive army mutinied against him. They literally captured their own king and handed him over to Cyrus, which let Cyrus take the capital of Ecbatana and all its wealth. Domino number 2,
In 547 BC, he uses these highly innovative military tactics to cross the Tigris and capture Sardis, completely collapsing the wealthy Lydian kingdom of King Croesus. And finally, domino number 3, the crown jewel of the ancient world, Babylon.
Now that conquest of Babylon in 539 BC is particularly fascinating because, well, actually, scratch that. Conquest is probably the wrong word for it. It wasn't some brutal, drawn-out siege. Cyrus basically entered the great city without heavy fighting. And you might be wondering, how is that even possible? Well, the local Babylonian king, Nabonidus, had totally alienated his own people. He was disrespecting their local gods and neglecting the temple of their chief deity Marduk. The citizens were so frustrated that when Cyrus finally showed up, they essentially welcomed him as a liberator who was there to restore their religious order.
And he locked in that victory with a truly monumental historical document, the Cyrus cylinder. Upon taking Babylon, he issues this clay cylinder, and it isolates his actual recorded legacy. Instead of coming in and declaring himself a ruthless tyrant, the text details his strict policies of restoring ruined temples, returning stolen religious statues back to their rightful holy cities, and abolishing the forced corvée labor that was imposed on the masses. It is widely studied today as this incredible early foundational template for religious freedom and human rights.
And look at how this lines up when you compare the text of the Cyrus cylinder directly with accounts from the Old Testament, specifically the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. It proves how his real-world policy of tolerance was corroborated across completely different ancient cultures. To the Babylonians, he was the benevolent ruler chosen by Marduk. To the Jewish people, who had been exiled in Babylon, he was quite literally a savior. He allowed them to return to Jerusalem and actively supported the rebuilding of their temple. It's insanely rare in ancient history to find a conqueror praised this highly by the very people he just conquered. But just like his birth, the very end of Cyrus's life is wrapped in this thick blend of dramatic myth and grounded historical fact. Because how does a man who conquered the world actually meet his end? As you might expect by now, the ancient historians couldn't agree on this one either.
Herodotus is back at it again, bringing the full cinematic drama, with claims that Cyrus died in a brutal battle against a nomadic tribe called the Massagetae. According to this myth, their queen, Thamyris, wanted to avenge her son. So she supposedly defeats Cyrus, cuts off his head, and dips it into a literal basin of blood, mocking his unquenchable thirst for power. It's an incredibly vivid, brutal story. But the official Babylonian administrative records paint a much quieter, frankly more boring reality. They confirm he died sometime before December 530 BC and was respectfully laid to rest in his majestic yet very simple tomb in the city of Pasargadae. A tomb, by the way, that you can still visit today.
So, to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. Does a ruler truly need these elaborate myths to be considered great? The ancient Greeks for sure thought so, spinning all these wild tales of magic vines, sunlit dreams, and bloody revenge. But when we strip all that away, we are left with a leader whose actual, historically documented legacy includes uniting the known world, ending exiles, and pioneering early concepts of human rights and religious tolerance. When a leader's real actions shape the very foundation of civilization itself, do we really need the magical campfire stories? Think about that for a bit, and I'll see you in the next explainer.